I'm losing my voice because I think that's why they selected me for moderator, so that I won't talk too much. But I'll get started by giving a little bit of perspective. When I started my career, energy was just about as boring as financial accounting. And it was that way for many years. Large corporations, utilities for the most part. Customers were called ratepayers. I can't think of a more degrading term than ratepayers for your actual clients. And for the most part, there wasn't much happening. Fossil fuel was burning, electricity was being produced, and really the task was to keep the switch on. That all changed. It started changing probably, if we look at it, with Enron imploding in the United States and around the world, as the case was. And suddenly there was offsprings of Enron taking high-risk bets on wind, etc., starting to circulate around the market. Immediately after that, we had 9/11. Questions about energy independence, energy security started coming up. Of course, some of the solutions weren't necessarily the best solutions in terms of how you create energy security, but for the most part, many countries went towards a strategy of energy independence of sorts. And immediately after that, Al Gore started running around with a PowerPoint convincing us that there's actually a problem with the model that we have. Not a bad PowerPoint, by the way, but that message started resonating with venture capital firms, and early stage startups started coming up. If we fast forward to today, and this is why we have this learned panel with us, we don't have a boring energy sector anymore. What we have is a rather exciting energy sector. Wind and solar are competing, sometimes without subsidies whatsoever, against subsidized fossil fuel, and competing and sometimes actually making gains. We expect to have electrical cars coming online within the next decade. Some countries are betting on that as the primary mode of transportation. So a whole new market for energy companies essentially coming online. Storage has become a thing. Storage that everybody thought was impossible or too expensive or too boring has become a real thing. Supporting some of the renewable energy, but also supporting a whole world of microgrids that in many ways are the efficient utilities of the past. And the utilities, of course, are busy with what they call the downward spiral or the death spiral of utilities. So it's become a really exciting world, if frightening to some of the incumbents within the market. Now what we're going to try and do in this panel, and you're going to help me out because I'm slowly losing my voice, we'll have a couple quick rounds just to get to know our panel members and understand their perspectives, and to help them discuss the issues of scaling up within this new and exciting world. And then as we move ahead, we'll move into the future and any questions that you guys might have. So by means of an introduction and why I think this panel is exactly the right panel to answer all of the questions that we might have is because we have a combination of perspectives here. Dorit comes from a world of regional development that's actually betting on renewable energy, and has essentially scaled a whole model that's pretty unique to the region that she represents. Vered here has an academic perspective and perhaps a life cycle or ecosystem type of perspective to bring into the program with the type of research that she's been doing on energy. Noam here has been ferrying the weird and wonderful market of solar energy in India, so a project-based company, so a very different model. And Yaniv, on the other hand, is here to represent the wild world of technologies, in his case starting out with a pretty wonderful monitoring technology here in Israel, and a company that then scaled into a pretty fantastic world. So energy is an exciting market. Let's help make this panel exciting, and let's start just with a quick presentation of your background, why you got into energy in the first place, and a little bit about what you do in the day-to-day.
Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Dorit Bennett, and I'm living in a place called Kibbutz Yahel in the Arava Valley, southern part of Israel. I got there in 2000, August 2000. From Pennsylvania, I got to the Arava Valley in August 2000. So it's a brave or stupid act or brave enough act to do.
I actually remember when you came.
Yes, we spoke.
I was at the Arava Institute
right,
at the time.
Right. I have a master's degree in earth science, not energy, not engineering. I was the head of the environment unit in Eilat and Eilot region, working with the environment ministry. In the time I came, if you heard, there were fish cages in Eilat, where 5 of the kibbutzim were earning a lot of money from raising fish in the open sea. It's a quiet open sea. There was a big environment fight in Israel. I won't get into it. You have a lot of all kind of inputs from that it was a good act, it's a bad act. But those fish cages were the first in Israel, first factory that was shut down because of the environment risk they are having in the Red Sea. So the fish cages were out, and everybody was very furious. And the local governors, the Eilat municipality and the Hevel Eilot municipality came to me and said, you are the green, making all the bad thing for the local economy or for the economy in total. And came to me people that are green by definition or environmentalist by definition, you know them. And I struggled. I thought about it a lot. Never mind what I said. It didn't make any sense. By the time I recognized the solar energy, the global warming, I went to all kinds of world conventions, and I looked around myself and I said, we have sun. Peres came to us and said, the late president said, the sun is not lazy here. Each morning she's coming to work, and he's right. We have sun, we have abundant lands, we are in the end of the electrician grid, so maybe we have a new thing here. Maybe we have a new industry. And I came to the governors and I said, this is what I'm thinking. I said, try to do that, we are with you. And all the rest is history. Right now, we are producing 70% of the energy in daytime to Eilat, till Tzometz Dom, Dom Junction, all year long. In 2 years from now, even less, we are building another big solar field, so we have 100% in daytime. And now we are looking into storage and hope that in 7 years from now, we'll have 24/7 renewables in the grid, in our grid. We are controlling everything into a microgrid. We're bringing everything to microgrid. We opened a VC or technology incubator that incubates right now 13 startups regarding renewable energy. We have a lot of academic courses. We are opening a new hub of innovation, R&D innovation for off-grid technologies in developing countries. A lot of conferences. We became to be the Sun Valley of renewable energy in Israel. I will do it with a little bit of zin'ah, I would say, modesty, a little modesty. And we are looking forward into this market. So our strategy was to have 400 megawatts from renewables. We have 200 megawatts from renewables right now. And we wanted to have 300 to 400 places of work. And we are around 100. We have a long way to go. And we have to be innovative every time, to be very creative, and we brought a new industry to the region that really, if you are taking the fish cages and the energy, so we are giving much, much more to the region.
Excellent, and we're going to talk about how you actually scaled that model up and perhaps to other regions somewhat more populated than just to point out when she said that 70% of the energy from Eilat to Sdom, that's about 50% of the land base of this country, but it is desert, so there's a much smaller population base there, for those of you who don't know. Why on earth did you get into the wonderful world of circular economy, energy, and industrial ecology, I guess?
So, thank you. My name is Vel, and I'm a faculty member here in the college school. And I was doing my master's and PhD in UC Santa Barbara. So I was living in the US for almost 8 years in total. And I came back to Israel with the interest to bring the industrial ecology concepts into business thinking and management. So nice to have all these great methods, but how do we actually use them in business decision-making, policy decision-making, and then also helping companies to use such methods as part of their toolbox when they come up with new ideas or to change things that they already do. Lots of my research is in the area of energy and transport, so electrifying transport is one of my main areas of research, and also how do you even model, we're talking from the scale-up. When you have a new idea, it's different than it's very established and you already know how the product will look like, the technology, the innovation, the supply chain. So how do you try to estimate environmental related issues when the idea is very in early stages versus when it's much more established? What type of methods you need and what type of knowledge the companies will need in order to deal with that. So in the context of the panel today, I will concentrate on that.
So how many came here with electrical transportation? Mm-hmm. Show of hands. Okay. What I hope is that 2 years from now we'll all meet here again, and some of you will join me, as the case is. No, India, renewable energy, rupees, as the case is. What led you into this wonderful world?
So in the way of background, I used to live in the US, and I went to business school in the US and had quite a few years of involvement in high tech and real estate as well. And through the consulting universe and connections in Israel at the time, was very involved in project development, project financing, and aspects like that. India just came essentially out of the blue initially for real estate. 2007, 8, 9 was the time of the BRICS, essentially Brazil, India, China, and Russia were promising the promised land to make money and whatever you supposedly were going to attach. And since I was involved for quite some time in a large company, like real estate company, a REIT in the US, renewable energy became pretty big, and renewable energy, at the end of the day, it's almost always a project, and a project is an SPV or some kind of an entity that needs to be financed. So as sexy as technology can be and other things can be, at the end of the day, it's about financing is a big part of the game. And so the cost of finance and the fixed income aspect and attracting the capital that is going after fixed income is really what drives the industry everywhere, and will continue to do that for a long while. And we thought at the time, we were not the only ones, that was like a big trend in 2008-9, that emerging markets, fixed income play essentially has a future. Renewable energy was, looking very different. Obama just came to power. The Kyoto Protocol was still there, and there was an expectation it would be renewed and even expanded.
It's still there.
It's still there in theory. Carbon credits were the big driver of the industry, and there was a whole universe, a whole new industry that really mushroomed with carbon credit trading. And in that context, we had a vision of building a REIT, essentially, or a fixed income entity that will go after emerging market and do good, by building renewable energy projects. And that's what, so India was just, a big market, supposedly with a decent legal system and a good place to start. So, you know, we now have, we started in a tough area called biomass and then moved into an even tougher area called small hydro. All these places, you know, have great promise. They still do. And India generally has been always a very promising country, and the promise is still there. We have 75 megawatts today. It's an active company. It's actually a profitable company. We have about 100 mega of additional development, so we have some decent size, and we're one of the few survivors and, you know, semi-success stories of doing what we're trying to do in India and potentially expanding into other markets. But in reality, the challenges are many. We can talk about it in the panel. And the promise is still large. So that's our story. We're still there.
Okay, Aviv.
Yeah, thanks, Noam.
So I seem to remember why you got into it.
Noam was one of our board members when we established the company. So I mean, when I got into the energy space, you know, energy was a very boring industry, old-fashioned, you know, nothing exciting. If you think about it, 10 years ago, the energy space was where telecommunication, for example, was 30 years ago. If you look at telecommunication, you know every little piece of data. You know when you use it, how much you use it, the cost of it, you know everything. In the energy space, even today, you have an electric bill, you have no idea on what to use that and how you can improve it. Now, in our households, we have no idea. But what about these C&I customers, commercial and industrial customers, that spend millions of dollars or euros or pounds on a bill, on an expense that they cannot understand or improve? And this is why I got to this, you know, business, basically providing visibility with the data to improve the business. For many businesses, this is the biggest expense. For many businesses, this can be used to improve the operational efficiency and not just the energy efficiency. So we established the panoramic power company with the technology that includes little sensors that are non-invasive, meaning you don't need an electrician to wire anything. You just snap these sensors over the wire in the electric panel, completely wireless, self-powered, no batteries, and basically get the energy data up on the cloud, and then use it to provide insights to these customers. Insights on how they can improve energy, insights on their machines and assets, and how they can optimize it. Think about 20 or 15 years ago, when you needed to get the weather forecast, you'd wait for the news. Today, or 10 years ago, you just, you know, click on the weather channel or whatever app you have on your mobile, right? We wanted to change the world, the energy world, to be also like that. With a click, you get into the data that you need to really provide the actions or do the actions that you need to do. And so we established the panoramic power solution. We started to provide the insights. We started to gain customers in the US and the UK and the rest of Europe. We sold the company to Centrica, one of the biggest energy companies in the world today. And now I'm managing for them the international business, the international solutions business around the world that includes solar, the technologies, obviously, you know, CHP, commodity, the energy, the batteries, and so on. Later on, I'll expand more about how we, you know, take that and scale it from a little thing or one or two solutions to a big business.
Maybe we'll continue with you, and before we start on how you solved it, can you pinpoint the issues that were serving as barriers to growth in this industry, and perhaps not just in terms of the market itself, but also in terms of talent within the industry, and a few other issues of that sort that I think in this scaling up conference would actually be very
Sure. So it's a good point, because if you think about it, you know, the talent would go to more attractive industries, if you will, like cybersecurity or, you know, telecommunication, and the energy space was not that attractive. One, gaming, yeah.
Yeah.
One. Two, even the customers, knowing that energy is the biggest expense, they would still focus on their top line revenues. So getting into the priorities of these different customers was a challenge. And three, when you provide energy insights, essentially you reduce the energy spent and you also hurt or damage the utility potential growth. However, if you look at the world, we're becoming a data-driven society. Every company, every industry is looking to gain data and monetize the data, use the data to improve the business. With energy, by looking at the energy data, it's not just reducing the energy spend, but improving the operational efficiency. So we can look at 5 air compressors and see by the energy consumption which air compressor has an issue and fix it before it breaks. So really helping these organizations to improve their operation. But not only that, utility companies understood that commodity, selling energy, selling gas, is not profitable anymore. The margin is shrinking. At Centrica, which owns British Gas and Direct Energy, we are one of the biggest energy companies in the world. We sold all of our power generation assets. Why? Because our margins were shrinking so much, we couldn't compete anymore. Renewable came on, and then the competition was so strong, there's no point to have power generation assets. And we focus on solutions and services rather than producing energy. So if you focus there, you need to really utilize the data to differentiate your offering and add value to the customer. And by doing that, you start to recruit the right talent. Suddenly, there's a big data play here. There are a lot of technologies that are being involved. You start to hire talent. The utility companies understand they need to find a silver bullet. It's no longer a commodity. Nobody can just sell energy and gas and grow a company. So the utility companies started to help reducing energy because commodity is not interesting anymore. And so we started to build what I call the next energy system of the future.
With regard to that, Noam, so as Yaniv described, there's this commoditization of energy. On the other hand, bringing energy to markets that didn't have it or didn't have the quality of service seemed at the time like a great idea. It still seems like a great idea. Can you talk a little bit about some of the barriers and challenges that you guys had with that regard? Because obviously you had a whole range of developing country type challenges that came in.
Yeah, so the challenge, the conclusion today that I'm reaching is that it's a little better to be in value-add setups of the industry, especially if you're in an emerging market or places where the cost of capital is high. Because there's a real connection between what you just said and cost of capital and how that affects everything. The challenges in places like India, but we've been involved in advancing business in a number of other emerging markets. We've even looked at Israel, which is not an emerging market. But at the end of the day, the commoditization, if it works well for an industry, you see commoditization, you see reduction in cost, which you've seen dramatically in solar, you've seen dramatically in wind, you've seen less in other sectors. But it has to go with an improvement in other aspects, with more stability on the regulatory side, with more stability on interest rates. Exchange rates become extremely important. So, for example, one of the things that made renewable energy tough in all of the emerging markets is simply capital movements that have nothing to do with renewable energy. But when you get into that business as an investor, that becomes a major driver. So you can do, and that's reality. If you do a solar project in Germany, your unlevered return will be 5% today, maybe 5 to 6%. And you'll end up probably making money. Not amazing, but you'll probably make money. And if you do it in India, a few years ago, you'll do it at 15% and you'll end up losing money when the cost of capital is taken into account as a dollar investor. So that drives the whole ecosystem. And in an environment like that, you have to find ways to add value beyond just placing wind turbines or placing panels. And that has not happened. And essentially, in some markets, there was a complete collapse. Places like India simply didn't really allow the growth in terms of bringing more capital and creating success stories to drive more investors. But India did happen. India, out of all these markets, is one of the markets that did happen. We can talk, what's the meeting point between the commoditization that is going to continue? Because at the moment, I don't see, technology-wise, I don't see something coming into renewable energy that is changing the world. I mean, it's still solar panels, and it's still going to be wind turbines. And for those who are interested in small hydro, which is interesting, very promising, there's nothing new coming, or in biomass, which is...
Let's get to the future in one moment, and we'll just finish up. In hearing this, and from an ecosystem perspective, can you point to some of the barriers that you think are knowledge barriers in this market?
Yeah, so actually I want to connect to what you didn't just say and continue from there. 15 years ago, I still volunteer in an organization called Engineers Without Borders, and we're doing a solar system, off-grid solar system implementation in Peru. And I came there still as a student. I said, wait a minute, we're going to put this solar system, it's going to be great, the kids can go afternoon and learn what they miss in the fields in the morning. But wait a minute, we have 6 storage batteries here, we're going to sit here for the 5-6 years that the system is designed for. Oh, and wait a minute, there is no recycling system for batteries in Peru, so what will end up with those big, back then it was car batteries, and what we're going to do, what the community is going to do with those batteries at the end. So we solved one problem of energy, and we created a different problem with electronic waste in that case, and groundwater pollution issues and other issues. And then the system perspective was eating me, and it's like, wait a minute, we really need to take much broader view when we think about energy system, food system, transport system, doesn't matter the domain. We really need to understand the bigger consequences and how do we even start thinking about it. So that was kind of and I think today this was the starting point for me, and I think this is still the challenge today, is that, okay, we have a specific technology, it looks very promising, we're doing it, it has great social impact, it has a financial return, it has some type of environmental issues, but aren't we creating another problem, or how can we make sure that we balance different environmental impacts when if we only concentrate on giving energy solutions, that we don't create pollution and other situation. And that's where the life cycle thinking, industrial ecology approach is much broader in sense, and I think that today, let's start with the small scale before we go to the scale, but many people that have all the ideas, the new technologies, they are so bothered with getting to market, having new technology that no one has before, introducing it, trying it in beta sites, whatever the challenge is, they have no space to also think about environmental, maybe potential negative environmental aspects of the good solution that could bring also very good from energy perspective. And this knowledge barrier and the system thinking perspective is then requires to be filled by the policymaker that maybe need to take the bigger picture for a second. And then suddenly companies, oh, I have a new hydrogen fuel solution. I go to the EPA in the US to try to push it in the ISF and say, wait a minute, come with me and show me your life cycle assessment result that you're really more environmental overall than the alternative. And then in case it's a good established manager, you maybe know how to react to it. If it's a young person to just, as you said, you started the job, I don't even know what is it. Wait a minute, I need to go on back, starting understanding what does it mean, how do I present it, how do I calculate it, how do I do it. So this knowledge barriers and the system perspective is many times missing, and I think it's a good opportunity, but it's also a challenge when we, from environmental perspective, look at the overall good or bad that happens, and not just on the local
Have you seen policymakers, government policymakers
yes, so
pick up that approach?
For sure. So actually, the hydrogen fuel example that I gave you is a real startup company in Israel that came up with a solution that was competing with the Toyota technology on hydrogen, and they went to the US EPA and they came back and they said, what is SA? How do we do it? What should we do? Oh, it's going to take us time that we don't have because we want to get to market, resources that we don't have because we are 5 people working, everyone doing everything when it's a startup. How are we going to do it? And also in Israel, and my surprise in the last 10 years since I came back, I can see the policymaker really doing progress, at least in thinking, introducing the concept of life cycle thinking, and other concept, resource efficiency, and asking now intenders to also talk about it, giving special, when Israel implemented the Fuel Alternatives Initiative 2 years ago, it was implemented very nicely to all the offices. Suddenly the Ministry of Transportation, Energy, Environment, Economy, all of them had programs related to alternative fuels, and they started to talk the language. Of course, the implementation, we still see, oh, wait a minute, how much solar we have here overall from the grid?
5%.
You know, what's the...
Well, the attempt was to do it
policy
with natural gas, but not...
Natural gas.
Yeah.
Natural gas is an excellent example. Should we use it directly to transport for vehicles that are powered by natural gas, or should we take the natural gas, put it into electricity system, and have all the cars electric in 10 or 15 years? What's better from system perspective? No one does such analysis. From environmental perspective, almost no analysis at the government level or the policymakers level, which is, of course, it could, with a very polluting grid that we have, or progressing slowly, the results might be completely different compared to what was the case in California.
Okay, so let's continue with this trend of discussing the issue of policy making as a barrier. Can you discuss a little bit some of the projects that were in your region, how you helped them out to get through the various barriers at the national level, regional level?
I'll speak about the national level because the region, we are part of Israel. We don't have regional policy in electricity or fundamental infrastructure. It's not going like that. I think that we lost a little bit when the gas came in. Look, in the first time, going back 10 years ago, the prices were very high. I remember the first installation we did with 50 or 60 American cents per kilowatt installed. We are speaking about much higher than the price for kilowatt installed in Israel from coal. Okay, if we are speaking about 8 American cents for kilowatt installed from coal, we had 60 American cents. So the government wanted, because of our connection to the OECD, that we signed the OECD and we have to sell our products and get into the global market, we should have some criteria and regulation getting into the new era of clean energy. And we started with very small quotas of renewable energy in Israel because they were afraid from the price, and we were afraid from the electricity company because here in Israel we had a monopoly. We have a monopoly called the Israel IEC, Israel Electric Company, that thought that bringing the renewable energy into the system will destroy the electricity system in Israel. Okay, they thought that when the sky will fall down, we'll be getting with the green electrons to the grid, and nothing will match, and it will be electricity fall downs and so on. And of course, they had to save their local, they are actors in producing energy in Israel. So it was very hard to introduce the renewable energy in Israel. It was step by step with the regulator that got into it. And when the price seems to be economic price, that we can say, oh, we are in the era of renewable energy, we found the gas. And the gas was a new change, it's a game changer in Israel, in the economic of Israel. And again, we are speaking about monopoles, and again, we are speaking about, oh, we know the engine, okay? We want steam. We know gas or coal is the same, something that we are familiar with. And it's more reliable, and it brings a lot of money to the government. Hopefully that we didn't see it yet, but never mind. And then all the government discussion went to the gas. And in the time that in all of Europe, in China, the prices dropped and dropped and dropped, and we could get into this area very easily in Israel. So after the gas boom, they understood, and right now the Ministry of Energy, in our last conference, said 3 weeks ago, we have to get into renewables, 70% in 2025. We asked him
70?
70. You are a very optimistic guy.
I was wondering what they were drinking. Okay.
Yes, 17% of renewables. And in this time also what happened that they broke the electricity monopoly of the electricity company. So they said the electricity company would not be an electricity producer, it will be only the divider or the transmitters. It's also a problem because also the transmission is very complicated and we need to do that much more sophisticated than how it does today.
But when entrepreneurs come to you and they have the next big solution for the region, how do you help them out through this type of?
Right now, I cannot help them that we maximized the potential of introducing the renewable energy into the grid. We are in the end of the line. Look, all the infrastructures were built totally different in concept. You have 3 or 4 power stations in the center of Israel. It's like a tree. You have the trunk, and then you have all the branches going till the smallest one in the end of Israel. So now, if we are speaking about distributed energy getting into the grid, so we have to bring from the branches into the center of Israel. And they're not capable to take all this electricity. So you have to think over how to totally change the electricity infrastructure. It's very complicated.
Okay, so with that, we move into the future. And you were saying that the future is the same wind, the same solar. And it sounds like it's getting boring again. Yaniv, help me out here. By the way, yesterday I was asked, what are the next big technologies in energy?
So I'll answer that. I actually think that leveraging the distributed energy together is a must and definitely not boring. And I'll use an example. Take EV, electric vehicle, and listen to these facts. By 2030, most of the countries in the world were not allowed to sell anything else but electric vehicles. By 2022, probably every person when buying a new car will buy an electric vehicle. Hence, 8% of the total energy consumption in the world will be used by electric vehicles. Now, how do you do that? How can we add 10% to what we have now, where I just said before, utility companies are shutting down energy consumption assets. How do you do that? Because if you all buy energy vehicles, electric vehicles, right? We have to be able to have the charging stations with the power generation, right? With the capacity. We take renewable energy, like solar, like CHP, combined heat and power, like batteries, and we deliver from these different renewables the capacity for the charging stations for EV. But not only that, like I said before, the world is getting to a situation where the capacity of the energy is very limited in different times. So you have solar during the day, but then in the afternoon around 5 p.m., there's no sun anymore. And the companies, the factories are still using. Households are starting to turn on their electricity. And so there's a problem time frame right there. So for that time, it doesn't make sense financially to generate electricity. And so there are demand response programs to basically accommodate for this time frame that is problematic. Now, going back to EV, the technologies, the startups, the companies that will have their platforms to manage renewable into these charging stations and back to the grid, what we call vehicle to grid, meaning taking from the batteries of the vehicles and the batteries of the charging stations back to the grid, these technologies will make it happen for the future. And I think
And you think those are the technologies that will win?
And I think these are the technologies that will win. This will make the boring solar very interesting because all of us will have to charge our electric vehicle during the day, not so charged during the night. During the day we'll have to charge it, and so solar will have a big play. Batteries, boring resources of distributed energy will suddenly be very attractive, and technologies and solutions that will manage the distribution of these different resources in the world to the vehicle and back to the grid will be very successful.
So Noam, in sort of looking ahead and assuming that the next big or next scale-ups will be in this sort of area of distributed energy and distributed energy services. What would you change about the business models that you had started with and found that actually drive very little value at the end of the day, or questionable value?
So we also need to charge him for this revised business model that we're talking about.
No, we'll just take it.
So effectively, the original model is really a real estate model. Most of the renewable energy and most of energy is essentially a fixed income business. That's the big capital, that's what drives the industry. And that's what's happening in all emerging markets, which, by the way, is 80% of the demand. So the problem is emerging markets, but the demand is all the challenges in emerging markets. And you have a nice-to-have approach to renewable energy in Europe and in the US, and you have a necessity approach in most of the emerging markets. So the way to go is going to be indeed distributed energy and other different innovations around business models. So some examples, the most obvious one, the most challenging one, and promising, I think, it's not specifically related to vehicles actually, it's more around storage and distributed energy. So we, for example, started selling the concept of dedicated projects. So instead of building a project that we sell to the utility, and they buy the power from us and we use the grid, we essentially build a project that is dedicated to Procter & Gamble's utility factory somewhere. And if you do it 24/7, actually because of the utilization of solar, if you have what's called banking, which is the ability to store somewhere, then the 5 megawatt consumption becomes a 25-30 megawatt project because of the time out of the total day that solar is productive, and that's a sizable project. You can actually build a business around it. If you take it to the next level and you don't use the grid at all, and that will require storage solutions that are more mature than what we have today, more cost effective, then you've got a business model that is not only incredibly promising. I can tell you in the US there's huge potential for that, for mega businesses that sell directly power to industrial centers, to factories, to malls. And I'm not talking rooftop. This is essentially semi-utility scale. That's the biggest opportunity I see when storage comes to be more significant and more cost effective. So that's one example, which is effectively a business model example. It takes away a lot of the dependency on regulation. And that's the big deal, because when you invest for 25 years, and you really depend on an ecosystem. And there are a number of other things around the same approach, technology solutions that were mentioned right here. Rooftop approach that is completely different. It's really all around distributed energy as I see it, because the pessimistic comment I made was that basically we're still going to see panels for a long while, and we're still going to see wind turbines for a while, and when we use hydro, it's going to be the same turbine we've seen since the 20s and 30s of the 20th century. You're not going to see, and biomass and those things are basically coal technologies. There's nothing in the horizon that, maybe hydrogen or other things, but there's nothing in the horizon that fundamentally changed the way the energy is produced, the way power is produced. So it's really all going to be around the business model and enabling technologies.
So what struck me in the preliminary discussion I had with Noam about this was that really this is the enabler of the industrial ecology, right? Because the model now changes where you actually build the efficiency on an existing industry or some major player that can actually offtake and be extremely efficient within a distributed model. How do you see that playing out in terms of that actually driving a major reduction in ecological impact?
Actually, before we go, I want to go back to the news example with the EVs. Sorry for that.
You got her upset.
No, not upset, just opening a great discussion. So So you mentioned all those facts about electric vehicles. It's interesting because in research, and in research consistently across different countries and different markets, we don't see such a fast diffusion as everyone in industry thinks of and hopes so. And that's kind of a major question for what. Okay, it's great in theory, but in practice it doesn't happen. It doesn't scale up yet. What is needed for that to scale up? Either to be more efficient through those mechanisms. But then we see that technology is not enough because we see that people are still not taking the full EV. They prefer the hybrid, and they will prefer them most likely. And we have a variety of projects about that. That hybrid is a major midpoint that consumers prefer before they will move to EVs. Then, does it make sense to move to EV in a country like Israel, for example, when the grid is around 800 grams of CO2 per kilowatt, versus the other countries that is already 300, 400? So does it make sense to do it in all countries at the same time within the next 10 years, or do we need to do it in different stages, and therefore the companies with solutions like yours, where do they need to concentrate in what market? And this type of research questions are really missing at the moment. And for us, the way I see it is really a concern. I mean, Steinitz in Israel just announced, right, in 2030, no, I will not allow new cars that are not...
Yes, it's part of a bigger plan.
Yes.
Maybe speaking about public electricity transportation.
No, getting stuck in the tunnel with the new train for 2 hours because there is only one.
But
so, yeah.
If I may, I think it's very related to the cost of batteries. If you solve that, I think a lot of companies are on the way to solve that, because solving the cost of the batteries will solve also the cost of the car, the speed and the distance of the car, and the number of OEMs, car manufacturers, that are doing that. And again, this is an assumption, but everybody's talking about solving it in the next few years.
Okay, we're going to get back to you, but cost of the battery. There was a company that tried to take the cost of the battery away, okay, completely out of the business model, and that was a better place. Nobody has good memories of that flame out. So maybe it's time to try that again. Maybe it was just too early.
I actually think it's a very good point. I think if today better players would have played in the market, their chances of being successful were much better. You still can argue the management and the business model, but I think this is the right timing, and back then it was premature. But I have to say, if you think about that, if you solve the cost of the batteries, that will get more cars, more distance, more speed, better ability to leverage that back to the grid and solve a lot of issues that make sense for us to leverage and get the EV to where it should be.
And it's more fun.
It
takes the energy market into gaming. But you want to finish it?
I want to go. So I would just say that in industrial ecology, say, will technology save everything? Will technology save us? Probably no, because there are people involved, right? So the people part, which connects directly to what Gina is working in a off-grid and small system, is really important. And then, if not technology, then what else is needed? And how do we increase the efficiencies of those small-scale systems to start? I think that in the emerging markets, they are used to thinking resource efficiency. It's not something new that we need to introduce to them. All the life, all the heritage is around variety of resource efficiency, and therefore I believe that those type of models can actually work better in emerging markets and do the leap. Instead of going all the way, see that it's wrong, and then trying to clean up, to move directly to those smarter, smaller, less centered systems that would really be more efficient. But I think that we need to put more weight on people and culture and changing. Changing is the hardest, right? And this is something that still many times I think in the scale up is also missed up. For better place, they said, they went too early, right? You said if they were today, maybe the market was not mature yet. The marketing message, many different things, the business model, the service business model, which now is much more popular in emerging markets because they don't have the capital to do
financial
systems,
market
right?
management wasn't that great.
No, I think
there were a few other things. But Dorit, staying with the people part, can you see any impact on the community of this strategy? Because it's been now almost 20 years, I guess.
No, we are
and
12 years in this project.
okay, and
I want
what's
to-
the impact on the
I will
community?
say immediately, but I want to mention two things. First of all, one of our startups right now is our Electrion. It's an electric road that will release the battery totally from the vehicle, and it's amazing how the prices are changing when you don't have to have a heavy car or heavy vehicle on the road and don't use the battery. So we have to think also beyond the battery, and I think that the battery right now are in 12 years ago where the solar panels were 12 years ago when the cost was so high and abruptly fall down in 5 to 6 years. It's also depend on the market, the need that people buy batteries and companies buy batteries, and I think the price will reduce dramatically in the next 3 to 4 years. This regarding batteries. In our region, I think that if you ask each person in Eilat and in our region where the electricity comes, everybody will say from the sun. So it's no doubt about it. There is no electricity company, there's nothing. I think in Eilat we turn a project of 30 megawatts rooftop, bringing the population to be prosumers, also to produce and consume in the same time. And we have so many houses, and so of course all the schools and all the public buildings, everything. We have 30 megawatts rooftop. I don't think there is any place in Israel with such a number. And everybody knows and understands that if we produce his own energy, he will have a...
And do you see other aspects of our culture changing with that?
I don't know to say to you, because the people that living there are totally different than the people that live in Tel Aviv, because they know the value of nature, they know the value of environment by living there.
Exists there for those that don't know.
No, I don't know.
live in
I don't know
life.
to say, but you can see that how people talk. It's like renewable energy is obvious, clean energy is obvious. To make a conservation in the buildings, it's obvious. Everything is like obvious when I'm coming to other places and I'm telling things that people look at me that I came out from the moon. So no, everything over there is obvious. For example, there is new kids that when learning engineering and computering and whatever, and they're in startup companies in clean energy. One of them even had in Clean Tech Open, is going now in San Francisco, and he was born in Kibbutz Torah. He was learning and living the renewable energy, and when he decided to go to the private market, he went to this field of interest. I don't know how to emphasize the change, but I think that to speak about clean energy is something that it's very obvious. We don't think differently in the region. Also in Eilat, and this is what amazed me. Amazed me that the hotel managers, big ones that are part of Reshet, hotel chains are coming to me and ask me how to reduce energy, how to bring heat pumps, how to introduce all kinds of things that 12 years ago they didn't know what I want for them.
Excellent.
So it takes time. It takes time.
Folks, you've been awfully quiet, and we've got the first question here.
One thing that struck me a lot, you said that in 2022, every car which is sold will be electric.
Every new car.
New car.
Yeah.
Yes.
In Israel.
No, in Israel,
So, yeah,
2030.
that's the inspiration.
inspiration
from,
2030.
the different, both the government bodies as well as the OEMs, that in the next 3 to 5 years, people would just buy EVs, electric vehicles.
In Israel.
Not just in Israel.
All the
Well,
way.
I can say for Europe. But Europe, in Israel is a small country, and usually many Israelis, I think, they don't drive to the neighboring countries. So the smaller distance, smaller reach of the car is not such an important issue. So whereas in Europe, people tend to drive also longer distance. If I buy a new car, I want to buy a car that I can drive 1,000 kilometers in a row without refueling. Or if I have to refuel, it has to be quick. No way that a majority of Europeans buy a new car that can only bring you 200, 300 kilometers.
Today.
Today.
But in the next 3 to 5 years, remember what I said, if you
Charging
solve
stations.
the
Fast.
battery issue,
Sure.
and you solve the charging stations issue, then you'll be able to do that. In the Netherlands today, one of the companies we invested in is Drives. It's a platform for the charging stations where we have about 200,000 of those, many of them, or the majority is actually in the Netherlands. You can cover the Netherlands with the charging stations and be able to drive 1,000 kilometers, with the support of the charging station. Same in Ireland. So I'm not saying it's solved today, I agree with you, but in the next 3 to 5 years, the battery situation will be solved and the charging stations will be available. Both the public ones, as well as the ones in the walking place, as well as the ones in the retail, like shopping malls and so on.
There's another aspect, because today in Europe, electric cars are highly subsidized. And this is possible because actually there are few electric cars. And governments earn a lot of money by just taxing fuel. And as soon as the electric cars have gained an important share of the market, government said, wait a minute.
I'm going to
Where I have my share.
So I want my share. And so electric cars again will be taxed like other cars. And
Actually,
I
that's
think
an
in the-
excellent point.
but
Maybe
in the-
I'll just relate to that, because that's actually an opportunity to completely change the business model. And granted, there's also autonomous mobility coming in at the same time, so it's going to have to change. But the point is that both the government and also the vehicle importers, the actual sales, the retailers, lose money because about half of their income comes from servicing that outdated vehicle technology. So they don't like it either, and they've been pushing back very hard on introducing electrical vehicle models. And that's an opportunity, because what that essentially means is that the government will have to actually change the way it taxes vehicles and for road repair, etc. And it's the opportunity to both turn that and the insurance industry into something that's kilometer-based rather than use-based, rather than just because you bought a vehicle. So I think there'll be an interesting point there. There was a question here, then you, and then you. Go.
I think this is maybe for Merit, but for any kind of well. Do you see any kind of potential for crossover, transfer of technology, assets, human capital from fossil fuels to renewables? So from oil and gas companies to renewable companies within the oil and gas when they diversify, or?
Well, I think there is actually some research on that, mainly in the US, showing that all the big fossil fuel-based energy companies either established or acquired renewable energy units just to show that they're doing something, right? And also to control the market to make sure that it doesn't go too big, too fast without them in the game. I think utilities understood today, and energy companies understood that this is happening. It's just a matter of the rate of diffusion, and they want to be ready for the revolution, or not to sell any more just energy, but more the service of the energy. And therefore, I do see an opportunity there, but it must be aligned, as Mom said, for example, with regulation. If the regulation is not to catch up and taxes are not going to be aligned, or the consumer's willingness to change behavior, to change the way when do they charge, and you want to drive 1,000 kilometers without stop until you don't decide that you are willing to cut it to 2 days, or to use other type of transport, it might not, so there are many two players.
It's hard to change people. It's hard to change.
Yes.
It's hard to change
But we
people.
change
You
all
have
the
to
time.
offer
Wait.
them service.
Harder than energy infrastructure. Question here.
Wait,
right?
yeah.
Oh.
If I may just follow up, sir, if you see, potential, so maybe it's an unfair question, and I think about it in my research of of, what can these companies that have been around for so long and have invested so much in people, in assets, in machines, in skills, how can they transfer them? And there's some cases where they can transfer those skills. So I think that's an ongoing maybe.
Yeah, I think it's about innovation and flexibility, their ability to change the way they look. So many of them open innovation hubs, for example, right? And then they said, look, use our experience, our capital, our establishment to come up with those new ideas. But they also want that also the way to control what's going on and what will come up and what requirements. So
there's
that's
some
my
semi-successful cases in California with regulation change to the megawatt, so you actually get incentivized for conserving energy, and in those cases, expertise came in from fossil fuel engineers that were then converted into energy efficiency engineers for that matter.
No, megawatt, it's not a company.
Is that rather than build the next power plant, you actually save that amount of energy, so a negative watt.
And in California,
demarketing, basically.
Yes.
Working on demarketing. It's a topic also of research.
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
2 weeks ago, Luxembourg announced that in 2020, public transport will be free. Totally free. And the reason being as well, not because they are subsidized the city transport, but they looked at the cost of traffic jam of the economy. I live in Holland, and the cost is 3 billion euro per year, for instance, for transport, for instance. When I talk to people in the Netherlands who are in the energy sector, whether it's wind or solar, actually they're looking really, really far ahead, and they're thinking of a time where energy will be not only a commodity, it already is, but it will be free, totally free. It will cost zero, and we will have to find not a way to make it work, because if I look at the example of Luxembourg, actually if we calculate more components, it probably works as from a societal perspective. Now my question though is to Noam, from an investor perspective, how and do you take in consideration more components within a society to have a business model that still incentivizes you into investing into what will make us all free from this energy issue? So describe.
Big question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I wouldn't punt it here, but I'll hear you in a moment. But I'll tell you what I would look at. If you look now at the fintech world, okay, and some of the financial engineering, the knowledge-based financial engineering that's being done there, I don't have the absolute answer for you, but I would say that that's what I would be looking for. So if I was on the hunt now, I would be looking for the next insurance company that does vehicle insurance through kilometers and online sensors, rather than through any other model and issues of that sort. And I think we can transform some of those issues, and I'll explain why. Because it goes back then to the community and to its governing bodies to say we're going to invest in energy because it provides us all these services, just like we invest in education or in health or whatever. Now, there's a big question around the world now whether we actually should be investing in all that stuff for everybody, or we should just be taking it for specialist communities, and so democracy is being questioned. But if we stay within the democratic model, it will become the responsibility and the incentive of the community, and that's probably the best governing body, because that's where you should have the long-term approach. Just as urban planning is the responsibility of the governing body of the community. So I would say that we'll probably be seeing them coming in and making the investments because of the quality of life that it provides us all, and it just becomes, just like education or health, something that a community takes care of itself in one way or the other. And there will be different models how to make that happen.
And nothing is free, you know, nothing is really free at the end of the day.
If I may add to that, there are also today commercial models, to add to what Noam was just saying. Today, there are commercial models that are already providing energy for free. In London, for example, Nissan, the car company, is providing households for £600 a car, an electric car, a charging station, rooftop solar unit, and basically you don't pay energy anymore because, and a battery, sorry, because they take whatever they can use out of these distributed energy sources back to where they need, and whatever you need to use, you use, but basically you don't pay energy. We at Centrica, for CNI customers, if we provide CHP combined with power, basically converting gas into electricity, if you're off the grid, we provide the CHP and the batteries, we will actually sometimes provide electricity for free because we can use your CHP and get it back to where we need. So right now there are business models that are providing energy for free, and I really assume and hope so that in the future, in the next few years, we'll have more and more so people won't pay for energy and will use it the right way.
And I like what you're saying, because it's indeed not the gratuity, like Luxembourg is not because of a giftism area, but I'm very reluctant to think the public sector will solve it. So indeed, combined to the technological innovation, there is a great business model innovation that needs to happen for this.
Okay. Good, you had and then
Yes.
last question back there.
Two
Yes.
comments on that. First, Shai Agassi, just after the meltdown, said that if he was to do it again, he would have give the cars for free and charge for the energy, but give so the price of the cars, because part of the cost is the battery, etc., will give the cars for free at least from the beginning, but people will still pay for the use, which is a different. It's different thing for you. So this is just one comment. The second thing, from environmental perspective, thinking about free resource does not, like, even if it's solar energy that you consume for free, still it costs us from environmental perspective to produce the solar cells, to install them, to use them, to dispose them. So if anything, I think from the environmental economics perspective, everyone is talking about increasing price of resources, especially commodities like energy and transport and infrastructure, and not. So here immediately there is a conflict of interest, maybe from the economic new business model perspective versus and the ability to diffuse those new technologies by giving them for free versus the environmental price that comes with that no pricing.
Okay. We have enough time for a last question here.
Okay, great. I give you some insights from living in the lab. Okay, I live in Norway. Right, it's called basically a green lab. Here is the November statistics for new vehicles. 41% of all new vehicles are 100% electric. In addition to that, 25 are hybrid, but this percent is going down from 36 last year, November, to this year, 25, i.e. vanishing. Okay, diesel is on the way out with 16 and going down 5% a year, basically 3 years, no diesel. By 2025, there will be no cars from petrol or diesel in the country. Right, that's reality. The only reason why it's not in the 60s, no way. The only reason why it's not 70%, 80% is because car manufacturers have not yet produced the SUVs and the station wagons, which is basically the family car for the Norwegians. Right, so that's why we're only at 40, and 40 is basically what we call city cars, right, the small cars in Nissan Leaf. Norwegians have changed totally their behavior. I disagree with the ability to change. Basically, they drive on Nissan Leaf. The second largest country for sales of Tesla is Norway. By the way, only 5 million people living there, right? Yeah. Basically, they just buy everything.
And then it's a little bigger than Israel, if I recall.
Yeah, smaller. Right, size-wise, it's much bigger, right? Because from Oslo, if you turn around the country, you got just back to Rome. Okay, if you just flip it. So, and they changed behavior. If you read the news 2 days ago, BMW came with the new invention, right? Or invention, just improvement of the previous one. Tesla takes 8 minutes to load from 0 to 80%. The new one is 3 minutes. You just wait a year or two, we're going to go down to 2 minutes. It takes me more time to go to the toilet than for my car to recharge to 80%. And we don't do 1,000 without stopping once for natural break. So from the lab, it looks very different. And also when it comes to the inability or a lack of imagination for new types of energy sources, we're missing the ocean. Ocean is the largest area in the world, which is the least utilized. And if you look at the lab now, which has 99.9% hydropower, produces more energy now, or coming more and more energy from basically stream, wave, and offshore wind, which will go immediately to Europe, because there's no demand in Norway whatsoever. So for the lab, it looks much more promising. I actually adhere to some of the things you're saying, right, about being more optimistic rather than pessimistic about the use of EV in the future. It's reality for me. No one buys any car anymore which has petrol or diesel in it. And the one who pushes it are actually the kids. If you're going to buy a such a car, your kid would basically exclude you because he'll be excluded or she from school. Right? They are the ones driving. In Israel, I've started to say there's no strategic intent. There are statements, but no strategic intent. In Norway, 10 years ago, they said strategic intent, okay, we are going to be helped. Subsidies, no payment when you drive into the city center, which everyone else pays. And schools start changing the curriculum.
But that's because we're in a much better neighborhood here, and we have no incentive to change, that's all. Folks, one more last question.
Well, it's not a question, but it's a remark. I'm an avid Tesla driver, and I can tell you once you switch from old school cars to Tesla, there's no way back. It may, if I drive 1,000 kilometers from the Netherlands to Austria to go skiing, yes, it takes 2 more hours because we have to charge on our way. But when we arrive, after not having steered for 10 hours, because the car does that, we're totally relaxed. We don't, it's part of the experience. The driving is part of the experience. When I get in a petrol car once in a while, it's annoying. They're noisy.
That's right.
They smell.
And it shakes. It shakes. And you don't.
It's
really bad.
Once you've gone from a restaurant where people smoke to a restaurant where people don't smoke, you don't go back. And the charging is irrelevant.
So that's actually the positive side of people's reluctance to change. You also don't change back once you've done something better.
There is no way.
Yeah. Last remark. Absolutely last remark.
Mark, on the gasoline industry or petrol industry, actually in Austria, I can say the biggest petrol company, they earn a lot of money with groceries. For one reason, because you have closure hours. The petrol stops, they can keep open on Sunday too. You're not allowed to open on Sunday in other shops in Austria. One thing, and also they also. Yeah, and also they also go into loading stations. Simply, these companies are just. They want to make money. They say, okay, I have here a portfolio of services and products which are offered. There I have the traditional gasoline business, and there I have a new business, and they also invest in new business. That's not for controlling it. It's simply portfolio management. You have an upcoming business and business which is reduced. It's portfolio management. Right? That's why transformation is happening.
But they don't diversify. So either it's for having control there, or it's because they can actually transfer knowledge to people and assets.
Yeah, it's commercial diversification in different businesses.
So folks, I think we've concluded that future is going to be exciting. It's going to be cleaner, it seems, in that respect. We'll have a few new business models that will shake everything up. So looking forward to the next conference. With that, I'd like to thank you guys and like to thank our panel here, and we'll see you at the next